coming up next on The Crack Between the Worlds.
And this is why it's so hard to relate to the unconscious self, because it's often something from childhood. It's often something that we don't know how to relate to. It isn't in our intellectual memory. A child doesn't remember this in its head, it remembers it in its body.
Hello, everyone. You've happened upon the introduction to the podcast, The Crack Between the Worlds, and I'm Mark Wald. To start things off, I'm going to take a few minutes to introduce you to what this podcast is all about. Then we're going to meet the show's producer, and using a real-life experience, we happen to dip our toes into how an unconscious pattern takes control of our life and how to transform it. So, let's begin the journey to changing our minds. Ready? 1, 2, 3, go.
Once upon a time, there was a confused, selfish, somewhat controlling, and sometimes angry person. And he was unconsciously deeply attracted to being with people that were just like him. And he began to think, how could these people be so unconscious of their behavior? And while they probably were, he began to realize they were mirrors of his own unconscious behavior. And looking deeply into this, he began the process of untangling himself, facing his unconsciousness in order to begin the process of waking up. And this is the hardest work that I am still doing. So this is a passion project for me, and we're going to be diving into things like the idea of self, the concept of consciousness, the dynamics of relationship, and the nature of reality. Most of that makes sense, but why the nature of reality? This is because we're beginning to learn that our beliefs about reality are incredibly limited and mostly not true. We really don't know exactly what reality is. And so, in some ways, we're unknowingly agreeing to limiting beliefs that hold us back. And beginning to challenge these limits enables us to more easily grow and evolve, learn and understand in this world. So it doesn't matter if we're dealing with self-sabotage, falling into the same traps, feeling stuck, spinning out, or if we're just tired of sleepwalking through life and we want to evolve so we can consciously create our own experience because we know somehow that there's something more to wake up to in this world. This work will not only change your opinion or your idea of self and reality, it will change your mind. We're working on shifting consciousness to engage the self to begin seeing, thinking, and being differently. When we talk about reality and self, we will be using models and maps because we really don't know. We don't know what the self is. We don't know where it's located. We don't really fully understand reality. We use models and maps unconsciously all the time in our life. Models and maps are not the truth. It's just that some of them are really, really useful. So like with the self, we don't know what the self is, but we have great models. We have things like understanding the ego or understanding how the mask works or our shadow or our unconscious self. Using these tools really helps us to navigate, work on, and grow. Without them, we wouldn't get very far. I also want to speak for a moment about the name of this podcast, The Crack Between the Worlds. This is a shamanic reference to a sacred space that is similar to those that the Buddhists and the Taoists talk about when they talk about the center path or the middle way. These are found through ritual and meditation, and I'm going to speak more about this in future podcasts when I can take more time with that. It is also my intention in creating this podcast to probably drop an episode every 2 weeks. The episodes will be roughly 30 minutes, and they'll consist of something like this, where I'm talking to you directly. I will also have some guests or partners in time on the show that will be people who either want to deepen their understanding, so they'll be asking questions, hopefully questions that I might not think of answering, and also people who I'm having a conversation with, bouncing off ideas and maybe even having disagreements about what some of this stuff means. So Having said all that, I would like to introduce to you my partner in time today. His name is Lloyd Lemmerman, and Lloyd is a good friend of mine. He is an artist. He is a videographer. He is a photographer. He works with sound and light, and he is also the producer of this show. Welcome, Lloyd.
Hi, Mark.
How are you today?
I'm good.
I'm so excited. How does it feel to be on this side of the camera today?
It's strange, but I'm getting used to it.
Good.
That's all right.
Welcome. We'll probably make you do this again sometime.
Okay, fair.
So I wanted to introduce that you and I met probably 25 years ago. And we were in a larger community together, so we kind of knew each other in that community. But then at some point, someone referred you to me, and I think you came to see me for a bit back then.
That's right.
And then our relationship evolved over many, many years to become really good friends. And now we're working together on this podcast.
Yeah, thanks for that.
Yeah, no, thank you. I couldn't do this without you. So, and I wanted to introduce you to everybody, and so welcome.
Thank you.
And I've been thinking about this podcast a lot with you. We've talked a lot, and in doing the intro episode, talking about all the things we want to talk about, right? So, and I'm thinking the thing that is one of the most exciting and the most interesting to me is dealing with the unconscious self. I think that is so fascinating. I think people have a hard time grasping. I have people who come in to see me and they'll do some work and we'll talk about the unconscious. They'll go like, okay, I understand it. But when they bump up against it, they're stuck. It's like, no, this is like, they're dealing with shame. They're dealing with unconscious processes. And this thing that's in the unconscious is there for a reason. So it's really hard to bring it forth. I think that's really interesting stuff.
It's vast.
Yeah.
And really influential.
Yeah. It's really fun work to do, but hard to talk about so people could actually get a feel for that particular subject.
I have something I could say about that if you want.
Oh, I would love that, actually.
Okay. So this goes back to when I think it was when I first came to see you.
Okay.
I was having problems in interpersonal relationships, particularly intimate ones, but that also seemed to have a strange relationship to my work relationships, especially managerial. And
that's right. Back then, you were a frustrated artist working in a corporate box.
That's right. Right. Yeah. So I worked on a small work team, but it was the management level that, for a variety of reasons, that I kept bumping up against. I couldn't resolve my problems, and I needed help. And I had tried other avenues, and until a friend suggested I come talk to you, which proved to be really valuable. What I encountered through our work together was a really difficult, frustrated 2-year-old who was acting out. That was my unconscious. Here's my unconscious 2-year-old for whatever reasons. I won't go into those stories. They're not relevant right now. But that 2-year-old was full of rage, which I didn't know, but that was casting, no pun intended, a shadow and influence on all these relationships. And in that process, there was some somatic work we did.
So like in our first session, as I recall.
Yeah. So in terms of moving that energy in my body, allowing this 2-year-old to really be rageful, I became 2 years old. But what I mean by that was what I was smelling, what I was tasting in my mouth, the sense my nose was running. It was out of time. It was not a 30-something-year-old man. It was a 2-year-old.
You remembered with your whole body the experience you were having when this happened to you. Wow.
Yeah. And it was profound and notable in the moment. At first, I thought it was weird, but then it made sense. And what the result was, I didn't have miraculous in how we think of results. They weren't miraculous from the outside, but what happened on the inside was that suddenly I was finding space to stop and register with that 2-year-old, so to speak. So that 2-year-old wasn't running the show anymore. So I had more conscious work to do, but at least the unconscious was not driving the bus.
You had, in that moment, you as Lloyd the adult experienced the 2-year-old, right?
Right.
So that in that moment, you're making the unconscious conscious.
Right. Turning the lights on.
Right, right.
And that's carried through. I mean, the unconscious is so vast that I always have things to tend to. And I can feel now where there's something unconscious at play. I might not know what it is, but I know there's something behind the scenes. And that has been a huge contribution and evolution.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for watching. If you're enjoying the show, please remember to like and subscribe. And if you have any ideas at all about the show, please leave them in the comments below. We'd love to hear about it. So thanks for watching. On with the show.
Can we walk through this from a like sort of like tearing it apart and looking at it experience?
Yeah.
So then here's this 2-year-old who is having a really difficult experience with mom or dad.
Right.
And it's incredibly difficult. And the 2-year-old is angry and unhappy and it's not working, but it's probably not okay for the 2-year-old to be angry.
Correct. There was a perception of like, there was nowhere to go with this. It was dangerous to do anything about it.
I'm imagining there was no, like you weren't being held and coddled and taken care of. And, you had to like eventually resolve this yourself as a 2-year-old.
Right.
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 And so you learned in that moment, okay, this rage and this anger is not okay. Because, unlike me, my strategy to survive was to be a rebel. Your strategy to survive was to be a good boy.
A good boy.
Right.
Yeah.
And so then you take this, so you have this frustration and anger and you can't express it. And it's in there and it's 2 years old. And then you go to work and you have a boss who has their own issues. I'm not sure if it was a man or a woman, but has their own issues and in some ways is probably behaving somewhat like your mother/father.
Right.
And so the 2-year-old is getting really frustrated, but it can't express itself. So it starts coming out sideways at work.
Exactly. Yeah. And I should be clear here too. This is not about blaming mom or blaming dad. It's about going beyond that. And it's like, well, whatever happened, that happened. What am I going to do about my response now?
Right. This is about taking responsibility.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And so in the work that we did, you were able to drop into and experience the 2-year-old completely. You felt its rage. You actually expressed the rage of the 2-year-old. You were angry.
I spoke like a 2-year-old.
Yeah,
I yelled like a 2-year-old.
Yeah. And you were talking about the experience so that the child, the 2-year-old, mostly what it's experiencing is its 5 senses. It doesn't have the capacity to conceptualize what's happening. It's not really thinking about what's happening. It's just wanting something different to happen. And so it's having all of this experience. And when a child has an experience, if a child is laughing, its whole body is laughing. If it's crying, its whole body is crying, right? And so there's this experience that involves, in your memory, not thoughts, but the experience of the taste and the smell and the feel of everything that was happening back then, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And this is why it's so hard to relate to the unconscious self, because it's often something from childhood. It's often something that we don't know how to relate to. It isn't in our intellectual memory. A child doesn't remember this in its head, it remembers it in its body. It remembers the experience more than because it can't conceptualize.
Mm-hmm.
So then you have this profound experience of bringing this into consciousness because you didn't dissociate. When you came out of this, you knew everything that happened.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And the 30-year-old you who went through this.
I think the technical word would be I integrated it.
Yes.
But it has stayed with me. And that's been 25 years, something like that.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being willing to bring that into the room.
Yeah.
Today.
Yeah.
That's really amazing.
It seems like that unconscious material is never out of style or irrelevant.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's really true to say that it's the destination is the journey. I don't believe in enlightenment. I don't think you ever get to the point where you don't have any shadow. So, yeah. But when you work on it like that, it liberates something, right? And it changes how you feel and how you behave and how your reactivity shifts from there, right? So then you're noticing that your reactivity has shifted. It just in that one session, I'm sure there was a change, but then we did a few more sessions too, but that you started to take responsibility for your reactivity. I'm going to talk more about this in future episodes when I'm going to go into more detail, but we learned that when we're in a reactive state, we're not in reality.
Oh, interesting way to phrase that.
Yeah. We are probably in a childhood dilemma somewhere, like you were with this manager. So, and we have a confirmation bias. So if we had a controlling parent, then they're being controlling. Right. If we had
it had important consequences too for intimate relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And even today, I have a lot of room to reflect and not react. And that's been really, really meaningful. I mean, there's a depth of connection that I have now and intimacy that just wasn't possible.
Right. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And then as we shift, from a dreaming perspective, from a, just energetic perspective, as we make shifts in ourselves, as we show up differently, the world treats us or shows up to us differently too. And so you go back to work and the manager's not quite as difficult, not only because you're not projecting on him anymore, but there's the energetic interactivity has shifted.
That happens again in my intimate relationship, where if I've processed something internally and recognized something and understand what's going on, suddenly she will respond without having this conversation. She'll respond differently. There's more room that just happens.
Yeah. Well, I've really enjoyed having you on this side of the camera, which is really kind of tough because I'm going to want to do it again, Lloyd.
Okay. Well, it's my problem to deal with, and it's not a problem. I'm happy to do.
I can't tell you enough how important your support is in doing this podcast. So thank you for that as well, for your talent, your artistic capacity, and your patience. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Good to see you again. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today. And remember, be good to you.
The Crack Between the Worlds is conceived and hosted by Mark Wald. This episode's partner in time, Lloyd Lemmerman. Produced, engineered, and edited by Lloyd Lemmerman. Music composed by Kindly, a Turning on the Lights production. For updates, visit Crack Between the Worlds and our Instagram @The Crack Between the Worlds.